Spunky by Dori Brink. In the last chapter, chapter 16, we found out we lost Dodger to cancer. But we still have Spunky and Happy for now. So let's see what happens in chapter 17. Peter, are you sure we're making the right decision? Peter and Daphne were talking in the kitchen after dinner. It's the only sensible thing to do, Peter said. You'll have the best of care, and the baby will have a lot of relatives to grow up with. My sister says we can stay with her as long as we have to, until we get settled. Daphne's voice was low. That won't take us long. The main thing is making sure you've got a good doctor. Daphne bit her thumbnail. You know, Peter said brightly, I think I'll like the idea of having snow in the winter. I've lived in Southern California all my life. It's almost summertime there now. You'll have to have a little patience. It'll be easier to move in warm weather. Peter, how on earth will we manage? I'll finish this job in a couple of weeks. All you have to do is get on a plane straight to your sister's house. We can sell whatever we don't want to take along. I'll pile the rest into a truck and drive there in a week. Clear across the country with Spunky and Happy? Sure, we'll manage just fine. There's nothing to worry about. I hate the thought of moving, Peter. We've been so happy here. We'll be happy there too. Besides, we'll have the baby. What was the baby like? And how would Dodger ever find us again if we moved away? Strange people began coming to our house. I barked ferociously and at each new arrival. But once, inside the house, these strangers stroked me and said nice things about me. And I just stayed around them out of curiosity. Some of them took pieces of furniture away with them, and the house became more barren looking with each visit. One afternoon, Daphne took all of her clothes out of the closet and folded them into suitcases. Happy and I watched her with a feeling of apprehension. When she was finished, she snapped the cases shut. Her things were locked inside. The next morning, Peter carried the cases to the back of the car and closed the raised lid over them. Daphne was leaving us. We followed her outside, not knowing what to do. We pressed close to her legs as she walked. When she got to the car, she looked down at us and gave us a familiar command. Stay and be good dogs, she said. Her voice was quivering. She knelt down and hugged us both. I choked back a whimper and looked into her eyes. We'll be together soon, she said, then bit her lips. Slowly, she got up and climbed inside the car. Peter started the motor and Daphne gazed at us from the side window. Tears were running down her cheeks. As they drove away, we chased after the car until it turned off our property onto the paved road. Then we ran back to the house and jumped onto the stone ledge to keep watch. It was hours before Peter returned. Instead of the familiar car, he was driving a small truck. At first, we barked and barked at it until we saw him behind the wheel. When he got out, he cheerfully rubbed our heads, but Daphne was not with him. We followed him inside the house. Large cartons sat awkwardly in the middle of the living room, filled with our belongings. An armchair and couch were the only pieces of furniture left in the room. Peter carried some of the cartons to the truck and put them inside. We followed his every move and often got under his feet, but he didn't lose patience with us. Peter never did. Later that evening, he filled our bowls with nuggets and then slumped into the armchair and fell asleep. There was no gravy from Daphne's pot, and no after-dinner biscuit. I scratched at the side of Peter's chair to remind him, but could not wake him. The house was chilly, and Happy and I huddled next to Peter's feet to keep warm. When the sun rose, Peter woke us cheerful as ever. He loaded the rest of the cartons into the truck, then locked the doors of the house. After inspecting the truck from all angles, he whistled for us to jump in. Then he got in beside us. We drove slowly down the side road. It felt good to be going somewhere. We passed the fields alongside the dirt road. I took a long, last look at Dodger's old tree. I stuck my head out the window as far as possible and looked back. The house was growing smaller and smaller against my mountains and had already closed its eyes. It was raining, and the steady thump, thump of the windshield wipers lulled me to sleep. I woke up when Peter pulled alongside a building with brightly lit windows all around it. We got out and I stretched luxuriously, enjoying the feel of the ground and the crisp air. The rain had stopped, leaving a fresh, fragrant scent over the leaves and grass. Happy ran around wildly, first in circles, then darting in and out of the half-open door we were heading toward. I kept close to Peter, making sure I didn't lose him in these strange surroundings. A man behind a desk gave Peter a key, and we went outside again. There were rows of doors all alike. Peter fit the key into one door, and we went inside. It was a small, stuffy room. Strange smells hit my nostrils the moment we entered. Over layers of human odors hung the sharp, penetrating vapor of disinfectant. I did not like being in this room. Peter filled 2 cups of water for Happy and me and then flung himself on the bed. In less than a minute, he was asleep. Happy and I curled up together on a fuzzy, soft rug in the bathroom and fell into an uneasy sleep. Who did this room belong to? Which one of the strangers who had left his scent behind would return to claim it? All night long I could hear sounds through the walls. Cars screeched by. There was whispered talk, a loud, high laugh, wind hissing through the trees. But the door was closed, and I could not go out to investigate. At last, Peter awoke. After washing himself, he led us outside to the truck. I watched the sun come up as we drove away. It was clear to me that our normal times for eating and sleeping were over. I thought of the meat and gravy Daphne served us over crisp nuggets, and my stomach ached. I patted Peter's arm to get his attention. I had to make him understand. He looked at me, and I grunted. "What do you want?" he asked me with a smile. I repeated my grunt, this time snapping my jaws together and shifting my front paws for emphasis. "You want to eat?" I sneezed loudly, the closest sound I could make for yes. "It won't be long, Spunky." He pulled up to a little building at the side of the road, where pungent smells of food made us drool. Peter brought us round, flat chunks of fried meat, hot and crisp at the edges. We devoured them. We drove all that day, and when we stopped to eat that night, I sniffed something very familiar. It was the heavy smoke of charcoal, the same smell we used to have on our terrace when Peter cooked outside. I sniffed the air anxiously. Would Daphne be here? Dodger? No, there was no trace of them. When Peter handed me a piece of charcoaled meat, I turned my head away. "What's the matter, Spunky?" There was alarm in his voice. I stared straight ahead, keeping my mouth tightly shut. I had no appetite at that moment. Chapter 18. We had been traveling for several days, and Happy was growing more and more restless. Each time Peter stopped and let him out, he ran wild. When Peter was ready to move on, he whistled for Happy to come. After a few moments of waiting, that crazy pup raced up, but each day we had to wait longer and longer. One evening, we were parked in front of a highway restaurant where Peter had gone in to eat. He brought us our dinner on a plastic dish, bits of meat, fish, and cooked vegetables. After eating this delicious meal, Happy and I decided to stretch our legs. But instead of coming back to the trunk with me after our run, Happy kept going. Peter whistled for some time, but Happy was nowhere in sight. We walked around to the back of the restaurant, where there were several tall garbage cans. Happy's head peered out at us, then ducked back. Peter ran after him, but Happy scooted right past us and disappeared before we could turn around. Time passed. Peter sat down next to the garbage cans with me beside him, waiting for Happy to shoot by us again. Peter's back rested against the building, his feet bent up under his chin. I could see he was tired. His eyes were blinking sleepily, and from time to time he shook his head to keep awake. There he was! Peter lunged, but Happy darted right past us. I was tempted to chase him, but didn't want to leave Peter's side. Suddenly, a shadow fell over us, blotting out the light from the restaurant. "Lose something, mister?" A huge man with a rough edge to his voice loomed over us. Bright metal gleamed on his jacket and cap. I stood rigid. Men who wore caps that hid their eyes were not to be trusted. Peter stood up, brushing the dirt from his clothes. "My dog, officer. I lost my dog." "Oh, you lost your dog. Seems to me you've got him right there at your feet." "Not that dog, officer. Another one. Happy. His name's Happy." Peter crouched down again, Here, Happy! Here, Happy! At that moment, Happy came darting by, brushing Peter's trouser and making the officer step back quickly. Peter flung his arm out to catch that slippery black body, but his arm fell with an empty thud to his side. The officer knelt down. Here, Happy! Happy, over here! He was gone again. The officer straightened up and took a shiny metal whistle out of his pocket. This will get him. He blew shrill, long shrieks through the air. Happy's head poked out from the corner of the building. The officer backed away a few steps, blowing the whistle. Happy came closer, fascinated. He trotted toward us. The officer squatted down beside the garbage can and blew short, soft whistles. When Happy was almost in front of him, the officer made the grab. His hand came up with a juicy watermelon rind. Happy was right behind him. The officer straightened up and shoved his cap to the back of his head. I noticed with surprise that his eyes were not unkind. Good luck, mister, he said, and slowly walked away. Happy was nowhere to be seen again. Peter went back to the truck, motioned me to get in, and we started to drive away. Where was Happy? I leaned out the window and looked back. There he was, coming after us as fast as his legs could go. Peter was watching in the side mirror. Happy was losing ground, trailing far behind us. At last, Peter stopped the truck. Up the road came Happy, panting and gasping, but still at a good trot. Only when he was right in front of us, tongue hanging loosely out of the side of his mouth, did Peter bend down and pick him up. Once inside the truck, Happy curled up beside me and fell asleep. He had that silly grin on his face. I'm going to stop there. We'll pick it up tomorrow and we'll finish it next time.